Welcome to PatsCast. The Patriots just wrapped up their final ramp-up practice before the players officially put pads on Monday and begin to attempt to take each other's heads off. But today's practice was a good precursor to that. Heavy competition, particularly in 11-on-11s, and of course the defense still gets the edge, as expected, but compared to the last couple of seasons, we're seeing the offense start to throw some haymakers themselves. We're finally seeing some real competitive practices, and today was no different. So yesterday, the Patriots basically just did a walkthrough, an install, if you will, to prepare for today's practice. The day before that was focused mainly on first down passing in a Josh McDaniels way, a lot of screens, a lot of quick, short throws, very efficient passing, I might add, from Drake Maye, just one incompletion during that practice to Kyle Williams because he was just dinking and dunking it all day, but it was about teaching Drake Maye and the offense to simply take a profit to create a manageable second down, as we saw Tom Brady do for so many years in Josh McDaniels' offense. Now, of course, Boston Sports Talk Radio had a coronary the last couple of days talking about this. They're trying to make Drake Maye a field general. Which I never understood that complaint, right? Like, don't you want your quarterback to be a field general? Don't you want him to be able to take command and make life a little bit easier for himself and the rest of the offense? But yeah, they're making Drake Maye a field general, like Mac Jones. Too many guardrails for this dynamic dual threat quarterback. Why isn't he throwing deep bombs on vertical routes? Well, if that's what you wanted, that was what today's practice was with Drake Maye in the offense. First weekend training camp practice in Foxborough, a packed house, in the offense and defense exchanged blows throughout the day in 11-on-11s. And as always, I'm going to start with Drake Maye, talk about the offense mainly because that's all that really anyone cares about. And I don't think any of us Patriots fans are worried about the defense at this point. But no dinking and dunking from Drake Maye. It was a third and long type day, throwing the ball downfield. And the numbers reflect a risk-taking approach, as you're often going to do on third and long. Got off to a bit of a rough start for Maye, overthrew a couple of receivers, but when all was said and done, he went 8 of 17 in 11-on-11s. You look at that and you go, less than 50%, not great, but 2 of those passes were drops, one by Stephon Diggs, believe it or not, and the other was rookie running back, second-round pick, Travion Henderson. So should have been 10 of 17, and then you're up toward that 60% completion mark, which is all you can ask for on third and long situations. But Drake Maye had the best play of training camp, a deep bomb to Pop Douglas, a 50-yard touchdown, rolling to his right. Go look it up on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Incredible clip. Drake Maye throwing it deep. The Patriots posted it on their social media accounts. And I have to say, Drake Maye, and I'm serious about this. I'm not just speaking as a fan. He is one of the very best I've ever seen at throwing the football on the run, particularly when it's deep downfield. If Joe Milton had made that throw that Drake Maye made today, why isn't Joe Milton being considered as the starter? We know why. Drake Maye's a better quarterback than Joe Milton. I still disagree with the Milton trade, but again, this is one of those things where Drake Maye makes the throw. People say, wow, that was a spectacular play. Joe Milton, he is the next Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson hybrid quarterback. So take it all with a grain of salt. No pads. There were some protection issues today, which I'll get to in just a moment. But Drake Maye so far has been spectacular throughout the first 4 days of training camp. Again, you can toss out day 3 since it was a walkthrough, but day 1, completed every pass except for one. Day 2, same drill on the short, intermediate passes, focusing on the quick game, first and long. And then today, day 4, really the day 3 practice, much lower completion percentage, but making some real highlight plays. In fact, Drake Maye really has only had one turnover-worthy play throughout all of training camp. That came on day 1 on a drop from Jabril Peppers on defense. He has not put the ball in harm's way ever since. And this has been the biggest red flag for Drake Maye that we talked about all last season, that we talked about all this offseason. He threw, 16 interceptions last season in like 13 games. That's not going to cut it. And he's getting used to this Josh McDaniels offense. Even today, third down drills, Drake Maye would opt to take the check down at times instead of taking major risks, but the explosive plays are still there, as we saw with the 50-yard deep bomb to Pop Douglas. Showing a lot of maturity out there on the field. Obviously, he stepped into a real leadership role, inviting the receivers down to his place or his parents' place or some Airbnb in North Carolina. McDaniels, I have to say, is doing an excellent job at getting Drake Maye used to this more complex offense while trying to find ways to make life easier for himself. And he's still sprinkling in explosive plays that we all know that Drake Maye is good at. So, are there going to be a lot of quarterback design runs? I think there's certainly going to be more than last season with Alex Van Pelt, but they're really just trying to get the whole offense, but particularly Drake Maye, used to the playing style, the structure of Josh McDaniels, where there aren't too many negative plays, death by 1,000 paper cuts, but then you still can unlock the different things that Drake Maye can do. I mean, Cam Newton ran the Tom Brady offense, and they certainly threw in plenty of QB design runs. I don't think it's going to go quite to that extent with Drake Maye, but it's going to be somewhere between that and sort of the simplified offense that they ran with Mac Jones while Josh McDaniels was still in New England. So, if you're a Drake Maye fan, this is a great time to be excited. Josh Dobbs hasn't done too well in the backup role, but the Woodbridge guy, or Woodridge, or whatever his name is, the third string guy, is a bit of a gunslinger out there, so there might actually be a little bit of a quarterback competition for that backup spot. Woodridge, or if I'm saying his name correct, he was picked up in undrafted free agency, or was he a 7th round pick? I don't remember. Let me know in the comments, but Drake Maye playing spectacular out there, starting to pick up this offense, and really this install is going very well. And then, of course, Monday when they put on pads, that will be a strong indicator at just how much he's improved from year 1 to year 2. However, once again, it was another challenging day for the Patriots offensive line. They gave up 5 would-be sacks, and that's probably being generous on some of the throws where Maye was able to get the ball out, where he likely probably would have been sacked on those as well. Again, the O-line was always going to be the concern heading into the season. It still is, but we will see who they really are on Monday when they put the pads on. According to Greg Bedard, Milton Williams beat Michael Wenu once. Keon White got Cole Strange a couple of times, 2 sacks for him. Clavon Chasen got around Will Campbell once. And Robert Spillane, who's having a great camp, might end up being the X factor on that defense. Really, a guy that not a lot of Patriots fans are talking about, coming from Vegas. Really good, explosive linebacker. He also got a sack, unblocked in today's practice. So 5 would-be sacks, probably was a little bit more. But again, this is to be expected with a questionable O-line going up against what should be an NFL elite pass rush. And of course, they're in shells and shorts, which gives the defense a much bigger advantage. But that doesn't mean there aren't things to be encouraged about with the offensive line. According to Savage Boston Sports, he's not a journalist, but very tapped in, maybe a little bit too tapped in. He tweeted, "Every single rep that I've watched Will Campbell versus Keon White, Campbell has handled his business." And that's pretty much what we've heard throughout the first 4 days of camp, is that, yeah, there's been times where Will Campbell's gotten beat, but you can count him on one hand at this point. For the most part, he's what you would expect for an early first-round pick at left tackle, which has been a problem for the Patriots now for really since 2018 when they won their last Super Bowl. Jared Wilson, in other news, 3rd-round pick, high IQ, that's all we heard when the Patriots selected Jared Wilson. He actually started at center today over Garrett Bradbury, which is tremendous news, in my opinion. I have not been high on Garrett Bradbury. Really struggled at the center position last year in Minnesota. Was really the best available guy that the Patriots could take at that spot in free agency. But then when they took Jared Wilson, I said, well, if he's who everyone says he is, high IQ, smart offensive lineman, he can win that job over Garrett Bradbury. Well, he's already starting to win that job. And he's not just taking reps at center, starting at center, which he did today. He's also taking reps at left guard, which we know there's a massive competition with Cole Strange, Layden Robinson, City. So even Caden Wallace is now playing guard. He's not playing tackle anymore in his second year. You're throwing Jared Wilson in that mix as well. So maybe you still have Garrett Bradbury, God forbid, at center, and you start Jared Wilson if you're not happy with Cole Strange at left guard. He took reps at right guard as well, which I don't think Michael Wenu's job is in any danger, but you could see a situation where Morgan Moses goes down at right tackle, you kick Onwenu over there, and then you have Jared Wilson filling at right guard, assuming he's not already at center. That said, considering we're 4 days into training camp and Jared Wilson is already taking starting reps at the center spot, I would bet good money that he'll be your starting center on week 1. And look, he didn't practice at all during minicamp. Just practiced a little bit during rookie minicamp. Some injury concerns there. We really weren't sure what to expect with Jared Wilson. Nobody was really talking about him before training camp started, but high IQ. We've said it a million times. He's already learned how to play guard and center in Josh McDaniels' offense. So good start there for Jared Wilson. Only started 1 season at center at the University of Georgia. So seems like a high floor, high ceiling type offensive lineman. Kind of foundational player that could be here for many years to come. Morgan Moses, the veteran right tackle who they signed in free agency, he continues to have his workload managed early on in training camp. This is something Vrabel is doing with the veteran players. For instance, Carlton Davis, the cornerback who's going to line up opposite Christian Gonzalez. He was in attendance once again, but didn't practice for the second time. More load management for the veteran players. I wouldn't put Christian Barmore in the aging veteran category. He's 25 years old, but coming back from blood clots, he's still getting that workload management treatment from Vrabel and the coaching staff. So he's not on the field taking as many reps as you would expect a 25-year-old to, but we all know what Christian Barmore is capable of. But Morgan Moses at 34 years old, he's not going to get a lot of those early reps. Give some more time for the younger players to come in, get their reps, and then Morgan Moses, who's very durable for his age, will be out there week 1. I guarantee that. So Campbell looks good. Wilson's already making an impact at center and the guard positions. Hopefully Mike Onwenu's conditioning is where it should be by the time week 1 comes around. You have a durable veteran and Morgan Moses at right tackle. So that really just means left guard is the only shaky position. You have tons of players, like I said, competing for that. Jared Wilson in the mix. Cole Strange, certainly getting his opportunities. He is the starter as of this moment in time. City So, wherever the hell he is. Layden Robinson. Caden Wallace, who was supposed to be your starting left tackle last year, ended up at right tackle, barely played. Now he's a guard. But one of those guys I think is going to work out. And I'm starting to feel a little bit more optimistic about this offensive line, but it is still the weakest unit by far on the roster. But again, Monday we'll have a better idea just how far they've come from the acquisitions in the offseason and with the coaching, adding in a former head coach, Doug Marrone, as your offensive line coach. As for the receivers, as I mentioned, Stephon Diggs had a drop, but if you actually look at the drop, he was going out of bounds. He was on the sideline. He ended up crashing into the Gatorade coolers. Almost got injured. Again, Stephon Diggs, the effort is there in training camp. If you're worried that he's just kind of coasting, especially coming back from an ACL tear, that's not happening. His one drop today was a real high-effort play, and really it's a bit of a reach calling it a drop. But the interesting thing about training camp so far is Stephon Diggs, who, we know Stephon Diggs is a receiver. He looks like Stephon Diggs out there. He looks like he's 100% right now. With all of that being said, he has not been the best Patriots receiver so far in training camp. That has been Pop Douglas by 10 miles. As we talked about, he had that long touchdown, 50-yard pass today with Drake Maye rolling to his right. He also had a nice crosser reception, running a crosser route from Drake Maye. There was a point where he wrestled the ball away from Marcus Jones. I think it was the play after his long touchdown catch. He has been incredible throughout training camp, which is stunning for a guy that's, 5'6", 5'7", probably weighs 160 pounds. I don't know what Pop Douglas weighs, but it can't be that much. They probably pad his height and weight, and he's wrestling the ball away from players like Marcus Jones. He's getting up. He's had a couple of catches where he's leaping like 10 feet in the air and catching the ball from Drake Maye. Really encouraging time if you're a Pop Douglas fan. Taylor Kyles was just talking about this a minute ago. He said the biggest improvement he's seen from Pop Douglas. We know DeMario, he's quick, he has good hands. He's a dream slot guy for Josh McDaniels. That's why I'm really excited that they brought back Josh McDaniels, who's going to do the same thing with Pop Douglas that he did with Julian Edelman, that he did with Wes Welker, that he did with Jacoby Myers. I think Pop Douglas could be your wide receiver number one, even after the acquisition of Stephon Diggs. We know Douglas was always good versus man coverage, but he really struggled quite a bit against zone. This year, at least so far in training camp, he is finding those soft spots in the defense. The chemistry is there with him and Drake, which we knew was a real issue last season. The chemistry was there for some reason between Drake Maye and Kayshon Boutte, but when it came to timing of the throws with DeMario Douglas, Maye was either throwing it a little bit ahead or a little bit behind, and a lot of that had to do with Pop not settling into the zone. Well, we know that's a big part of Josh McDaniels' offense, and Pop Douglas has picked it up easily. And we know the tight ends, particularly Hunter Henry, know how to get open on those short to intermediate routes against zone defense, but Pop has finally figured that out as well. So that's great to see. So your top three starters right now: Pop Douglas, probably your wide receiver number one, Stephon Diggs, and then you have Kayshon Boutte as the X receiver with Kyle Williams lurking in from the outside in a competition with Boutte. So those are your four guys, locks to make the team. But from there, it's really anyone's guess on who ultimately makes it. And that actually includes Kendrick Bourne. He's clearly with the second team out there. He is not taking that many reps, if any reps, with the starters. We know Josh McDaniels loves Kendrick Bourne. He's been in this offense before, and perhaps they're just doing this to give the younger guys more reps. But right now, it looks like Kendrick Bourne is fighting for his NFL career. He's competing for a spot with Jalen Polk, who missed another practice due to muscle tightness. I think it's highly unlikely unless they put pads on and Jalen Polk is out there looking like he did last training camp. I think it's highly unlikely, at least at this point in time, Jalen Polk makes the roster, but he's competing with Kendrick Bourne. There's Javon Baker, who really didn't look bad at all today. And of course, Efton Chisholm, the undrafted guy from Eastern Kentucky, he's going to be in the mix. Also, what happens when Mac Hollins comes back? Mac Hollins had 5 touchdown receptions last year in Buffalo. Good career over in Vegas. I think he was a good addition this offseason. Is there a spot for Kendrick Bourne once Mac Hollins comes back, particularly with all these other young guys that he has to compete against? So there's a real competition for that number 5 and number 6 spot, especially once you factor Mac Hollins back into the mix. And once again, this kind of raises the trade conversation with Kendrick Bourne and Kayshon Boutte. Kayshon Boutte continues to be highly involved in this offense. He is a clear-cut starter from at least all of the team drills that they've run so far in training camp. There's real value there as a third-year player with a high ceiling, which I think Kayshon Boutte has if you want to trade him, but maybe they want to keep him, and there has to be a few teams out there looking for a guy like Kendrick Bourne. Certainly, there's been lots of rumors, especially when the Patriots were interested in Brandon Ayuk last year, that Kendrick Bourne could go back to San Francisco, but he's a reliable NFL veteran receiver, a year and a half removed from an ACL tear, really started to look like himself at the end of last season. If you don't see a good spot on the roster for Kendrick Bourne and you keep wanting to ride the Kayshon Boutte wave, which I don't blame the Patriots for doing. I don't think anyone expected him to be as good as he was year 2, and now he has some real coaching behind him. You have to consider trading Kendrick Bourne. As great of a leader as he's been, as much of a presence as he's been in the locker room in New England these past few years, clearly loves being a Patriot, but you got Stephon Diggs, you got Pop Douglas, You got Kayshon Boutte as a clear starter. Kyle Williams competing for that spot with Boutte. Then you're bringing Mac Hollins back. Where is the room for a veteran like Kendrick Bourne? You know, you can see yourself stashing a Jalen Polk or a Javon Baker or an Efton Chisholm, whether that's on the practice squad or just having them on the roster so nobody plucks them away. Kendrick Bourne, on the other hand, you know, at his age, at this point in his career, he can contribute somewhere else in the NFL, and I just don't see a spot for him at this point. So that's going to be an interesting story to follow over the coming weeks, particularly after they start practicing in pads, does Kendrick Bourne even have a role on this team? Again, I think you get a lot more trade value if you want to trade Kayshon Boutte and then put Kyle Williams or Kendrick Bourne in that starting X slot, but I mean, why would you give up on Kayshon Boutte at this point, the way he's been playing? And, you know, there were a lot of issues last season of him not being able to pick up the playbook, lining up in the incorrect spot, but he's been out there, he's been working hard, and from everything I've heard, he's been able to pick up the Josh McDaniels offense. So, very interesting storyline. Kendrick Bourne and where his fit is on this roster. And then I mentioned Javon Baker, who I think a lot of us have given up on, but he's been against the threes most of camp and a little against the twos. So he's out there with Josh Dobbs and Woolridge, and Dobbs has had his struggle. He's thrown many picks, including one to Jabril Peppers today, but Javon Baker, he's catching the ball, he's making plays. Alex Barth a minute ago basically said he's made the most of his opportunities in training camp. Still has a long way to go, but he had a good practice today and is working his way up the depth chart potentially. And as I've said many times on this podcast, Patriots drafted Jalen Polk and Javon Baker last year. Jalen Polk was supposed to be plug and play week 1. Low ceiling, high floor. Javon Baker, low floor, high ceiling. He was always going to be a bit of a project. Well, you don't even have Jalen Polk, who cleared his physical, but for muscle tightness or whatever, he just has not been out there. That really presents an opportunity for Javon Baker to earn a spot on this roster. I think a few weeks ago, we were all saying, like, Baker doesn't really have a shot in making the team. They're going to want to ride it out with Polk, but if Polk isn't even seeing the field and Baker's out there putting in the effort, putting in the work, you got to give the job to him. And he's the kind of guy that you probably can stash on the practice squad and keep him around. Baker did have a touchdown reception today. It should be noted that he didn't celebrate. He went right back to the huddle, so all the yelling and screaming from Mike Vrabel is clearly getting to him. If he stays more consistent, I think there's a spot, not just on the practice squad, a spot potentially on the roster for Javon Baker if he can continue working his way up, even with all the competition ahead of him. Mike Vrabel clearly likes the guy. You see it all the time in clips. I've seen more clips of Mike Vrabel talking to Javon Baker, who is, 7th or 8th on the depth chart at this point, than any other player on the Patriots roster. So Vrabel's putting his arm around him. Polk isn't even out there practicing. Kendrick Bourne practicing with the backups. There's a real opportunity for Javon Baker and another opportunity for Efton Chisholm, who obviously isn't getting a ton of first-team reps, but you watch him out there and you see Danny Amendola, Wes Welker, and Julian Edelman. You just see that short, quick receiver that Josh McDaniels can take advantage of. For the first time in a long time, very encouraged about the wide receiver room. Really happy that there's all this competition. I think there's going to be some moves, whether that is trading Kendrick Bourne or Kayshon Boutte potentially, or releasing a Javon Baker or a Jalen Polk. Lots going to happen in the coming weeks. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be back here at PatsCast on Monday when the players finally put on pads. Very interesting time. Very encouraging. Great practice today. Defense still has the edge against the offense, but highly competitive. And you have to remember, I think this is a much better defense than what we saw last year with Drake Maye, which was supposed to be pretty good and was pretty good early on. I think they've had a ton of improvement there in the offense. They're still having their moments in practices. Pads come on Monday. Offensive line, we're going to find out who they are. You're not going to want to miss it. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel on YouTube, and hit the notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Brad Whitaker. We'll see you next week.